13 minutes past the hour here on the NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that sports. And today I am joined by Sterling Bennett, host of 49ers Access and covers the Niners for 95.7 The Game. Sterling, how are you doing on this illustrious morning? A morning in which I don't know where to go when it comes to the 49ers defensive coordinator search. I mean, it seems like it just keeps getting worse.
With every day that goes by, every bit of good news turns to sour bitterness because every time it seems like they're going to get this thing done with Robert Salah, there's another more blockade put in the way. But we'll see how things go. Obviously, this morning was kind of a big downer for Niner fans across the NFL.
And it was. And why was it a downer? Well, let me show you guys why it was downer. I mean, when I saw this morning, actually I saw it yesterday, I literally almost shit my pants. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And for some reason, I feel like Trent Baalke has something to do with this. I really do. But here it is, guys. Buccaneers offensive coordinator Liam Cohen is taking himself out of the running for the Jaguars head coaching position to stay in Tampa on a new contract that now will place him among the highest paid coordinators in the NFL. When I read this, I thought, you've got to be kidding me. There's no fucking way he just did this. And he did. And from now on, I hate this man, Liam Cohen. But you know what? I don't. Because I think he made the right choice. Because I think he, look, he probably looked at it and said, I'm working for Trent Baalke. This guy's a phony. This guy's full of shit. I don't want to work for this guy. And you got Khan, their owner, who's like, And so I think he backed out and said, look, I'd rather just stay here in Tampa and make things work. And maybe he used that as leverage to get himself a new contract. But that was the news that broke yesterday. This was heartbreaking. I was so pissed. Sterling, why would he back out?
Well, I think you look at the landscape of the NFL and you can maybe make the argument that working with Trevor Lawrence and Brian Thomas Jr. is maybe a place you'd want to be, can certainly lure you out there. But when you talk about coaching the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and getting a raise, you're in Florida, no state tax, you coach Baker Mayfield, you have Mike Evans, you maybe get to bring back Chris Godwin, you have one of the best offensive lines in football, Todd Bowles coaches the defense. I think it's about picking your spots. And I think in the future, you look at what other teams may be out there for head coaching jobs. We'll see what happens in Seattle with Mike McDonald. Even staying in Florida, look at the Miami Dolphins. Maybe something shifts there where you can stay in Florida and go to Miami next year. But also, I think you're coaching in a division now that has the Saints, who are terrible. You have the Panthers that are trying to figure things out, and they may, but still feel a couple seasons away with Bryce Young as their quarterback, if he remains their quarterback in 2 years' time. And then you have, you have other teams out there that you really don't have to compete with. Who are the Falcons with Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix? Like, you really have a great gig out there, and you get a higher raise, and you get to prove yourself while also kind of picking your spot in a better place next year. So I think for Cohen, it makes all the sense in the world. You get to avoid a disaster in Jacksonville with Khan and Baalke and Lawrence, and just that defense is disgustingly bad in Jacksonville. Stay in Tampa for one more year. You can always leave next year. It's really as simple as that.
And like you were saying, you have the assets in Tampa to be successful. But then this led to this being posted yesterday, which was Robert Salah being the lead to get the job in Jacksonville.
Come on! Oh, come on! Oh, come on!
3 times. It's awful. When I saw this was the feeling inside right now. It was I was like, no! Now Robert Salah is projected to be the front runner to get the job in Jacksonville. I posted earlier today, I was like, if Robert Salah has a social media account on any platform, we need to find it, and we all need to hit him up and tell him not to go to Jacksonville. Trent Baalke is not the guy you want to work for.
I'm sure you wouldn't be the first person to slide into his DMs. I'll just say that. Very attractive man.
here's the thing: is the Niners put all their eggs in one basket. They wanted Robert Salah, and this has been a debate all on X, on social media, in the media in general. Why did the Niners not look at other coordinators? Now, we don't know the full story. And when it comes to Dennis Allen, it could have been that, he was already attached to wherever Ben Johnson was going to go. These agents talk, the same amount as we do on social media, but to each other. So there could have been a lot of arrangements going on, but it feels like they didn't bring in, what's his name? The other guy from the Jets. I'm blanking right now.
Oh, Jeff Ulbrich.
Jeff Ulbrich. I was gonna say Urlacher. I was like, that's not it. Yeah, didn't bring in.
You
they
can
didn't,
fight
at
for
this
that too,
point,
I guess.
you might as well. They didn't bring in. They didn't bring him in. They didn't bring in Dennis Allen. They didn't bring in Amaruno. So it's kind of like they were really hoping that he would come back to them, and maybe they looked at it and said, "Hey, look, I think they're gonna go with a more offensive-minded coach in Jacksonville." And now we know that Cohen's out, because he got more money to stay where he was at. So now when it comes to Saleh, he's been there before. He used to coach there in Jacksonville. And now he's the projected front runner to get the head coaching position in Jacksonville. And I'm sorry, I think you would find more success as a D coordinator in San Francisco than you would as the head coach in Jacksonville. That's just my take. I mean, look, I have a little bit of a biased take on it, but what do you think about him becoming the head coach over in Jacksonville? Oh, I hate saying that. Ugh.
While no decision has been made yet, he could very easily return to San Francisco, and all this panic would be for naught. That said, this is the worst place you can be if you're the 49ers. I think all the criticism, without knowing what's happening behind the scenes, which Tim Kawakami kind of alluded to, there being more going on that we don't know about, which, okay, fine. Without knowing that stuff, though, it's hard to not criticize the team for how this has gone. It feels very lackadaisical. It feels like for a team that is pretty competent in most of the things they do, this has been one of the more confusing job searches they've had. Obviously, the last couple years were different. Deep playoff runs. You kind of didn't have your pick of the litter when it came to DCs. And they certainly tried. But that's the thing. It's like, even last year, when they went to the Super Bowl and they lost, they seemed more proactive after that game when it was calling Bill Belichick and calling the Chiefs about Steve Spagnuolo. Yet you don't go to the playoffs. You have an extra few weeks to work on things and talk to coaches, interview people, set things up for yourself to hopefully have a next great DC in the Bay Area. You don't. Now, maybe people turned it down, but usually those are things that get out to the media. I know there was some speculation that they had kind of informally talked to Jeff Ulbrich, which we have no idea what those conversations were, but he's gone now. Dennis Allen seems to be gone. He'll probably go to Chicago with Ben Johnson. And Arumo's in Indianapolis now. You really only have Saleh, which it seems like he may be gone, going to Jacksonville if he gets that job. And don't forget, the Cowboys still need a head coach. The Raiders just hired a new GM. They need a head coach still, with Tom Brady in charge over there now. It's not like it's just Jacksonville, although they seem like the favorite. And maybe that is Saleh's first choice. This is like the worst place to be, because now instead of, okay, Saleh's our guy, we're going to give him the highest paid DC money in the league, and we are Saleh or bust. It's like we are so close to bust that you are going to be left behind with no options to turn to.
Now, our other options obviously would be Brandon Staley, who, look, I know he gets a lot of shit from Niner fans because of the way the defense performed last year. Now, granted, he wasn't the defensive coordinator. He was the defensive backs coach and an assistant head coach in San Francisco. So we haven't really seen what he can do when he's fully in charge of the defense. I mean, he had a really good defense in Los Angeles before he got the head coaching gig over in San Diego. And so I still think that he can do a lot of good things for the Niners. It just feels like, again, it's reminiscent of the Nick Sorensen hiring, where the options that we went for all said no or went elsewhere, and we just decided to promote from in-house. But I think we're really selling Brandon Staley really short in terms of like what he's going to be able to do. But at the same time, I really want Robert Salah to come back. I'm hoping he doesn't go to Jacksonville. And you know, the treachery of Trent Baalke will continue. And look, I mean, they're making us wait all week too. It went from, oh, he's gonna have his interview on Tuesday. Oh, he's gonna have it on Wednesday. Now it's gonna be on Thursday. He's gonna fly down there. Now it's on Friday. You're just like, wait, what day is this fucking thing on? You know, I don't get it. And I feel like Trent Baalke, I know this is not the case, but personally, I feel like Trent Baalke is putting out all these fake information, like, tell him it's on Tuesday. Okay, tell him it's on Wednesday. Okay, Friday now. It just to piss off all the Niner fans. But now they literally hold this man hostage and say, we're going to offer you a bunch of money to be a head coach. And it's up to Robert Salah to say yes or no. And we don't know. I mean, they may be interviewing somebody else as well, and he might not even be their top candidate. But I'm kind of see how it plays out. But like you said, the Jags defense is pretty terrible, so he'd have a huge process on his hands to kind of revamp that. My whole thing was that the Jags need a offensive-minded coach because they need someone to mentor Trevor Lawrence to get him going, because he was the #1 overall draft pick, and he's not a bad quarterback, but he definitely hasn't thrived in Jacksonville. And so I think that's why Liam Cohen was hot on, he was high on their list, but now who knows where they're going to go. But we look at who else is there. So we got this right here that I wanted to share with you. So here's some lists of other defensive coordinators. One would be Gus Bradley. Gus Bradley is still out there, and he is the guy who hired Robert Salah in Jacksonville as a linebackers coach. And this was the original Legion of Boom defensive coordinator, I want to say, over in Seattle. So this guy, he's really good as a defensive coordinator. Didn't have really good time over in Indianapolis. Didn't have much success as the head coach in Jacksonville. And then, of course, there's also, Matt Eberflus is also out there as well. Do you think there's a chance that the Niners have reached out to these two guys and have even talked to them?
Oh, I think the Niners have 1,000% at least tossed out the idea of Gus Bradley. Gus Bradley's defense when he was in Seattle was the defense that Shanahan always points to as the one that gave him the most fits when he was the OC with the Falcons and even before that. So there's a mutual respect there from both of those coaches, Shanahan and Bradley. I get you wouldn't have the schematic changes. There'd be a schematic continuity, which is what Shanahan wants, albeit wasn't really what he talked about during his post-season press conference. But one issue I have with Gus Bradley is that I don't care you're the godfather of this Seattle cover 3 defense. I get that sounds great, and you can pitch that to your fan base. And Gus Bradley, in his historic career, has not been a terrible coach, and there's so many great things that have kind of been taken from him along the way, hence Saleh, Ulbrich, and many others around the league. The issue is, and I get personnel plays a massive role into how good or how bad your defense can be. However, great coaches get the best out of their defense, right? And it's really hard to find great coaches, and I think Saleh is one of the top-tier coaches. Dennis Allen belongs in that conversation. I think Matt Eberflus belongs in that conversation. However, since 2021, Gus Bradley's defenses have ranked 26th in points allowed the last 4 seasons. So they're not stopping anybody from scoring in a Gus Bradley defense. This past year with the Colts, they were 24th against the run. If that screams, bring that guy into San Francisco, I got to sell you on something else, because that is the exact problem you're trying to get yourself away from. Points allowed and terrible run defense. And that run defense in Indianapolis had relatively good linebacker core, although not great secondary pieces, and they had to force Buckner. So it's not like they had nobody. They had Quinn Pay. They had a Fatano. Like, they had some pieces that first-round talents you expect to play well. And obviously, again, personnel plays a role into that. But if you want to talk about Gus Bradley, he's on the downward trend of these coaches. It's a coach that on paper makes sense, but in reality, what he's shown the last 4 years or so kind of makes me scared that Shanahan may be somewhat blinded as to, okay, well, this guy stopped my offense, so he must be good. That's not always true sometimes.
It's
It's
not.
not always true all the time.
I mean, at least he's an experienced defensive coordinator that knows what he's doing for the most part,
Sure.
has that experience, but still, it's going to be interesting to see who they end up going with and if Saleh takes that job or not. I feel like there's a chance that we won't even know until this weekend or Monday if he actually gets the spot, because he has the interview on Friday. And a lot of times teams don't announce anything over the weekend anyway, but these days I think it seems like everything gets announced as soon as it gets figured out. There's also Matt Eberflus, former head coach of the Chicago Bears. That ended horribly for him. So maybe he's looking to become a defensive coordinator. And we don't know if the Niners have had interviews with these other defensive coordinators. I mean, they haven't announced anything. They haven't announced, other than Townsend, they haven't really said that they've talked to anybody else. They just said,
Right.
you know, we talked to Robert Salah already, Townsend, and Brandon Staley is an option internally. So it's definitely something that they're going to be kind of focusing on. But regardless of who they get for their defensive coordinator position, there are options in order to make the defense better. And one of those options was something that you made a video about, which was the idea about getting Max Crosby from the Raiders. Now, I don't know if the Raiders would actually make this trade, but they need help. They need draft capital. They need to rebuild their team. You got Brock Bowers, Max Crosby, and then a bunch of guys. So it's like you really need to revamp your team. What do you think about this idea of trading for Max Crosby? And do you think it's actually a legitimate trade that could possibly happen?
I think when you talk about, could this trade actually happen? Sure. I think that obviously it takes two to tango. It takes the Raiders willing to part ways with one of, if not their best defensive player, but it also takes San Francisco willing to trade multiple draft picks to make it happen. I think that, in a perfect world, your defense looks like Robert Salah at the helm and Max Crosby with Nick Bosa. Obviously, it feels like a long shot. Obviously, it feels, like that sounds so out of this world, like this is not going to happen. But I think that, and really this has all kind of been sparked by what Crosby has been saying in the media recently as of, last Friday, and also what Diamo Lenore tweeted out over the weekend, which kind of came out of nowhere. Him just being like, I want to see Max Crosby in a Niners jersey.
What was that about?
I don't understand where that came from, but maybe he was watching Good Morning Football, where Max Crosby was talking about his future and had been very blunt and open about, I don't want to go through another rebuild. I want to win championships. I want to win Super Bowls. I want to be perennially involved in games in January and February. And if that's the case, and the Raiders are going to go through a rebuild again with a new GM and head coach, it's going to take him a couple years to be a contender when you have to play Patrick Mahomes twice a year, Bo Nix and Sean Payton twice a year, and Harbaugh and Herbert twice a year. It's going to be a hard road to get to the playoffs. So, and not to say those teams' runs of success will last forever, but how about San Francisco, where you have Seattle, who they're competent enough and maybe on the upward trend, got to find a new quarterback. But then you have the Cardinals that are kind of putting things together. They're certainly playing spoiler beat San Francisco twice this year, but you look at what's to come, hopefully next year for San Francisco in 2025, the Rams could lose Matthew Stafford. They could lose Cooper Kupp. Like the Niners could be, if they're fully healthy again, the top dog in the NFC West, at least, if not the entire NFC. And so if, is a trade like this possible? I don't see how it couldn't be, unless the Raiders simply just say no. I know a lot of fans in my YouTube chat yesterday and on Twitter were like, don't do it. No, it's a bad deal. You can't do this. And I'm like, why would you not want another star edge rusher that this defense has been looking for the last 5 years? It was Dee Ford, it was Leonard Floyd, it was Chase Young, it was Drake Jackson. Like, they've been trying to find the guy opposite Nick Bosa, and they haven't been able to for a variety of reasons, right? But he ranks 6th in sacks since 2019, 59.5, just 2 spots below from Nick Bosa. He has almost 430 total pressures. He has 9 forced fumbles. Like, this is one of the most dangerous defensive players in football.
Absolutely.
I don't know how anybody would not say, yeah, bring him to San Francisco, but that's where the conversation of compensation comes in, which is what the big hang-up could be. And I'll just ask you this. While I have a comparison trade here, I'm sure maybe you watched yesterday on my own show, but I tossed out there on Twitter, would you trade the number 11 overall pick for Max Crosby?
Yes, I would.
Exactly.
The reason why is because you look at last year, he had 7.5 sacks, only played in 12 games, but the prior season, 14.5 sacks. 2022, 12.5 sacks. So this guy has gotten better and better each and every year. And I think that this would be a huge upgrade from even like, especially when we got Chase Young, that sounded sexy, but didn't really work out as well as they wanted to. This one I think would work out. And on top of that, you would have Leonard Floyd backing up both Nick Bosa and Max Crosby. So you constantly have a 2 combination of pass rushers at defensive end in the game almost at every time. So that would make our defense, our pass rush, so much better. And there'd be times where they'd have, where they would run Crosby, Bosa, and Leonard Floyd out there all at the same time. Like just go right after him. It's their race car package, as I like to say. But let's take a listen to what Crosby had to say on the clip that you were talking about, just to get a better perspective of it coming straight from the horse's mouth, which is, Max Crosby. Here we go.
Everyone's trying to win. You know what I mean? The intent is not changing. Everyone wants to win. That's no secret. But it's about stability. So whoever that guy is going to be, who they bring in, I know that's, in the back of their mind. They want to have somebody that's going to be here for the long haul, get to build a real culture, build something that could be sustained over a long period of time. So, that's what it looks like for me. But yeah, I've had a lot of turnover for sure. I've had a lot of different D-line coaches, a lot of different coordinators. I've seen a lot in the league, but at the end of the day, for me, like that's all that really matters is winning, having a chance to win, being these type of games at this time of the year, and getting a gold jacket. You know what I mean? That's all that matters to me.
So let's talk about that. We're talking with Sterling Bennett, host of 49ers Access. He covers Niners 95.7 The Game. If you were looking to package a trade to get Max Crosby, and you talked about the number 11 pick, I think that would have to be involved, or you're talking about a flurry of other picks that they have, 10 picks in this next coming draft. So it doesn't have to be number 11, but it could be a combination of multiple picks going to the Raiders because, like I said, they need to rebuild. They need to revamp that whole team. They're getting a new head coach. And I think this time Tom Brady is going to have a much bigger say in who gets selected for that head coaching job. Even though he's like, I'm not really going to be a part of this until I finish my commentary career. I bet.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure, dude. So, I think if you were to trade number 11 pick, it'd have to be straight up, like number 11 pick for Max Crosby. It can't be a number 11 pick, a second rounder, and a fifth rounder next year. No. Because, look, if you did the number 11 pick, at least you're telling the Raiders, hey, look, here's your chance to get your next star. May it be a quarterback, may it be anything.
Well, you essentially have 2 top 10 picks at that point.
Exactly. Now, some would argue, well, no, don't do that because we need an offensive lineman. They're not going to draft. If you ask me, they're not going to draft an offensive lineman. They're not. They're going to draft a pass rusher. And if they can flip that number 11 pick for Max Crosby, I would do it in a heartbeat. Yeah. They have not had a history of drafting a lot of offensive linemen. Now, they did draft Aaron Banks and they drafted Dominic Pooney, but that's really about it. The ones that have been successful.
Don't forget McGlinchey.
McGlinchey, that's right. They did out of Notre Dame. So what do you think? I know you kind of mentioned earlier. What do you think would make this trade happen if the Niners wanted to pursue a trade for Max Crosby?
So I think to start, you have to look at, would San Francisco be willing to part ways and make a big splash like this? I know this offseason there's been a lot of debate of what Brock Purdy gets and how that affects the salary cap and stuff. I think starting with the financials and if San Francisco would be open to making this move, I think the Niners are always looking to make splash moves, whether it is Chase Young, middle of the year, Christian McCaffrey, middle of the year. Don't forget, the last time this team picked 11, 12 in that range, that was the Trey Lance year. Now, obviously, Trey Lance, that didn't work out, and maybe they feel a little burned by that, but the finances work for Max Crosby as a whole. According to Over the Cap, he'd be owed around $42.8 million the next 2 years, but none of that is guaranteed. Hence, you can restructure that deal any way you want to, add guaranteed money onto it, lower his cap hit, and he has 2 void years on his contract. So, or excuse me, 3 void years. So you can erase those void years, give him a big contract extension. He'll be in San Francisco where he gets everything he wants. He gets continuity at quarterback, defensive line coach, head coach, GM. He has Fred Warner. He has Nick Bosa. He has a newly minted Diamador Lenore. He has Mustafa. He has like all these pieces in place he wants to have to be able to contend. The finances work from every single aspect of it, how you look at it. But I think San Francisco, when you talk about 11th overall pick, let's say it is that, although I don't think it will be. Let's say it is just that. You'd be getting a bona fide superstar with that pick, where no matter who you take at 11, whether it's an edge rusher, Abdul Carter from Penn State, who won't be there at 11, but let's just say he is hypothetically, you don't promise he'll be a star. Whether it's Will Campbell, Kellen Banks from Texas or LSU, there's no promise they'll be stars, and they could be great, but you just don't know. There's a risk in taking 23, 24-year-old players who have never played a snap in the NFL, whereas Max Crosby, he's had 4 or 5 years of tremendous success. He's been a Pro Bowler. He's been a sack leader.
He's only 27.
Like, it makes the most sense, and you'd pair Nick Bosa with the guy you've been looking for half a decade. But if there is a trade package you'd point to and compare, because a lot of Raider fans, even Niner fans, would say, you're going to have to give him 11 and your second round pick and your third round pick. And that's not entirely true, because last year, just 1 year ago, the Carolina Panthers traded away Brian Burns to the New York Giants. Burns wanted a brand new contract, and everyone talked about, 2 first-round draft picks. It'll be this and that. It'll be this outlandish trade package. And thankfully, that didn't happen. It was just a second-round pick, and then it was a 5th-round pick and a 5th-round pick swap. The Panthers essentially got nothing, if you will, for Brian Burns. And I think that right there is where your starting point is. Okay, I will give you my 43rd overall pick if I'm San Francisco. If because that's 4 picks behind where the Panthers or the Giants were picking, then I'll give you my 4th-round pick instead of the 5th-round pick. And I'll give you a 4th-round pick swap. Like, you can make that work realistically. The Raiders don't take that big of a cap hit this year and next year. You extend Max Crosby, and if you're San Francisco, you get a bona fide superstar by using your 2nd-round pick and a couple mid-round picks, and you keep number 11. Like, why would you not, if you're both sides, why would you not be open to doing that? If Crosby doesn't want to be there because of a rebuild, he said, get me out of here. San Francisco better be on the phones tomorrow if that's the case.
You would think, right? And then if you made that trade, then you can really say, okay, 1st-round pick is going to be the best offensive lineman that is available. Maybe,
or
a right
tackle. Who knows?
Or defensive tackle, because at that point, if you're taking on Max Crosby, they're probably not going to go sign a DJ Jones, because now they're dumping money into him. Or defensive tackle. Offensive line or defensive tackle. And look, as much as we hated our offensive line, most of them are going to be back next season, except for Aaron Banks. He's a free agent. But, I mean, honestly, the times that we had Ben Barch or even Spencer Burford at left guard, they actually performed really well. Better than Aaron Banks. I don't know what was going on with Aaron Banks last year, but he was he underperformed. But the question, too, is that would Mark Davis make this trade? I mean, a lot of people say that Mark Davis would never want to help the Niners, but, I mean, honestly, they're not even in the same region anymore. Yeah. He's in Las Vegas, and this would give them more draft picks to make this team better. And I think that a new and incoming coach and GM would want more draft picks. Like, yeah, let's do this. This guy wants to get out of here. We're not going to be contending for the next few years. Let's get some draft picks and let's do this. Because they have 10 draft picks, almost 12 at one point, but they have 10 draft picks this upcoming draft. I mean, that's a lot of players that to select from. So I would do it. I think it'd be great. I would love it. I mean, it would immediately, if you got Max Crosby in a trade, the Niners would immediately be Super Bowl contenders without even a thought. Like, yeah, they're going to be up there as well. Like, now your other option could be somebody like a Khalil Mack, who's about to become an unrestricted free agent. He's debating on if he wants to keep going with his career. Now, granted, he's an older player, but this would be another option that they could explore, is trying to sign a guy like Khalil Mack. What do you think about that option of Khalil Mack?
It's funny you bring him up because I don't remember the year in which he got traded from the Raiders initially, but the Niners called Oakland at the time and said, hey, what do you want for Khalil Mack? They were open to making that move and getting Khalil Mack via trade. So that more so goes to prove my Max Crosby point of, hey, the Niners have been willing to make moves like this almost every single year. But I think, let's say you're not going to get a top edge rusher in the draft, and maybe you don't want to spend too much money at the position, and maybe you're valuing interior offensive linemen and tackles and defensive linemen and a safety and all that stuff. I can see San Francisco saying, look, we are not kind of coming to a crossroads, but we do have to make some contract decisions on George Kittle, who will probably get extended this year, Kyle Juszczyk, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga. Like, you have some choices to make, and let's say you want to save some money. Let's say you want a 1-year deal for a veteran player can produce for you if he can stay healthy. It's not going to be this like earth-shattering or ground-shaking move like Max Crosby would be, but it would give you a consistent defender opposite Nick Bosa that can also be rotated in with Leonard Floyd, that can keep both those guys fresh for the year. I do think if they do acquire Max Crosby, I think that would probably spell the end of Floyd's tenure in San Francisco, knowing the money they can save by cutting him or trading him. However, if you get Khalil Mack, I think fans would love that. It kind of gives this ring-chasing mentality to the team where it's like, hey, we have free agents wanting to come here to win now automatically that believe in this team, and you could probably afford to bring back Hufanga if you want to and Greenlaw if you want to, and maybe afford more of your free agents and pay your entire draft class, and also whatever Brock Purdy cost you, like, you can make room for that stuff. So I would love that as a backup option, and honestly, it may be their first choice. It'll be interesting to see what Mac does in free agency, if he comes back, or when or if he'll even sign. I do wonder if he'll kind of ponder and see how the market plays out, and like kind of play this Zadarius Smith kind of role of like, I may be 34, 35, but I can kind of be this mercenary 1-year kind of gun for hire player.
Yeah.
I think that may be what you're looking for in Khalil Mack, and I don't think he'll cost you that much money compared to Max Crosby.
Well, and on top of that, last season, as a veteran, right now he's an 11-year veteran, so he's had a long career in the NFL. But he had 17 sacks last season, which is like, whoa, what?
He was really good.
He was really good. I was like, holy cow! This season, a little bit lower. He only had 6. So, is Father Time catching up to him? Possibly. We got Taron Rodriguez in the chat. He's from LA. He'd probably be like, he'd probably say, yeah, take him. But anyway,
Well, don't forget, even last year when the Chargers brought in Harbaugh and their new GM, like, they were trying to shed salary, and you heard connections of Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, and San Francisco did call the Chargers about Joey Bosa and were almost going to make a deal. So again, it goes back to they're hunting that number 2 edge rusher, and I don't think Leonard Floyd is that for them when it comes to the upper echelon of those guys. But I think San Francisco, even if they're not big game hunting, will certainly be hunting in free agency for a guy.
Yeah, and there is the option also of a Joey Bosa if he becomes a free agent, if they part ways with him. Last year he only had 5 sacks. He only played in 14 games. Yeah. What's crazy is that the year before that, I mean, this guy's been injured a lot. In 23, he only played 9 games. In 22, he only played in 5 games. Like, oh. But in 2022 and 2023, in those 9 games, he had 6.5 sacks. The last time he had a full season was in 2021. We played all 16 games, and he had 10.5 sacks. Either way, he would be a benefit I just don't know if that is the true answer at defensive end. Is it'd be cool. I mean, don't get me wrong, to see the Bosa brothers, out there. That's fun. That's cool. Hey, you can make T-shirts, you can make merch, but are they going to produce? I don't know. Is it going to be the same as having him and Leonard Floyd? Probably.
The upside is certainly there, but I do think whether you sign Mac or Bosa, Floyd has to stay. He doesn't get hurt, so you have to keep him at that point.
But I agree. If you get Max Crosby, then you should probably move Leonard Floyd. And that could be a move that they do on draft day. Like, hey, we'll trade you Leonard Floyd for, a 6th-round pick, or just to move him on. That could be something they do. But I think by getting a guy like Max Crosby, that actually didn't say completely, that really helps solidify your defense. Obviously, you still need help at the interior defensive line. But that would be a huge help in getting a guy like Max Crosby. I would be thrilled. And a lot of people were really pushing back on that. Like, oh, don't do it. It's a trap. Like Admiral Akbar, it's a trap. Yeah. It was like, what are you talking about? This is a really good player that you'd be acquiring. So to kind of pivot off of this, I did want to ask you a question. You posted an article on heavy.com that the 49ers would reap big rewards from the Vikings and Sam Darnold. So you want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, so a lot of this comes down to what I think it's Nick Corte of Over the Cap put out yesterday, a projection of the Niners compensation picks they'll get this year. And they'll get one for like Ray McLeod in the 7th round. They'll get one for Chase Young, who went to the Saints this year. But the big one is Sam Darnold. And I know a lot of it has been made of, could they bring him back to San Francisco and, you replace Brock Purdy, whatnot. But I think the letting go of Sam Darnold, albeit I don't think this was the plan in mind. I don't think they thought he would do what he did this year. But because he signed that 1 year, I think it was like $10 to $11 million contract with the Vikings this past offseason.
He was 10,
played great, paid 99% of their snaps. McCarthy gets hurt. He becomes a starter. They go nuts. He is projected as of right now to be in line to give the San Francisco 49ers an extra 4th-round pick in compensation. So you're looking at this year, they'll get 10 draft picks, and they'll have their 1st-round pick at 11. They'll have their 2nd-round pick, but then they have 2 3rd-round picks because of Rand Carthon and DeMeco Ryans. Then they have what, as of now, is 3 4th-round draft picks because of Chase Young and now Sam Darnold, where we talk about the Niners having to hit on picks. Getting a free 4th-round pick from Sam Darnold is huge. Don't forget last year, you had guys like Jacob Cowing, Isaac Guerrero, Malik Mustafa, all in that 4th round. So it's a round San Francisco commonly hits on, and it also gives them more maneuverability to go up and down the draft board to get a guy they like. We saw last year San Francisco did that a ton in middle rounds, so I wouldn't be shocked to see that. But as of right now, as the things project, Sam Darnold's leaving last year and going to the Vikings and playing great could net San Francisco an extra 4th-round pick.
And that'd be huge. Another pick for them to use either to draft or to trade. It just gives them more flexibility. I agree. That would be awesome to get that for Sam Darnold. There is one drawback though. Corte went on to say, like, Darnold, yes, as of now, can get that 4th-round pick for you. But there is this awkward like bubble he's sitting on where, because his contract didn't have any playoff incentives, because why would it? He was Sam Darnold a year ago. That there is a way where that 4th-round pick becomes a 7th-round pick, and instead of Sam Darnold's contract on the books, it's Clelin Ferrell going to the Commanders. So as of right now, it's great news, but it could certainly become bad news later on this year. So let's talk about the current playoff situation right now. I know you probably watched a lot of that over the weekend.
Not
really
a single
good games.
snap. Hated
Really?
all of them. No, I'm kidding.
You're like, I don't want to see this.
Yeah.
But when we look at the current playoff bracket, this is courtesy of ESPN. Who are you taking between Bills and Chiefs? That's the biggest game.
Win, or who do I think will win?
Both. Who do you want to win, and who do you think will win this game?
I think I'm with the entire world in saying I want to see Josh Allen and the Bills go past and beat
absolutely
Patrick Mahomes. I think a lot of this, the hate that the Chiefs get, a lot of it was simply because they're good. They have Mahomes, they have Kelsey, you know, they're very successful and people hate success. But after watching my team, the Niners, lose 2 Super Bowls on pretty interesting plays, 3rd and 15 still haunts me to this day from 2019. That said, after watching the Texans and Chiefs game and just seeing the penalty disparity between the teams and how the refs called that game, and I'm not saying games are rigged. I just think it's simply they know Mahomes is their golden ticket to views and people hate them. And it was really ugly to a point of you had CJ Stroud and you had Will Anderson in the postgame press conferences talking about, we know what it means to come here. You have to play the Chiefs and the refs. It's a bad look for the NFL.
It is.
And I do wonder, I really wonder that because there was so much vitriol on the field, off the field, the fans, if you want to be in that tinfoil cap NFL rigged conversation, you have to wonder maybe the NFL is like, okay, like we have to make sure Kansas City doesn't get the 3-peat this year. Go ahead, Bills. But I think, although I'm not in that realm of living, I really want to see Buffalo win. I think they lost 3 or 4 Super Bowls when they had Jim Kelly and Thurman Thomas leading the charge. Josh Allen's a great guy, incredible quarterback. I want to see him get the monkey off his back this year.
Grew up a Niner fan, big time Niner fan. That's all I need.
Big country boy, first round. Like it's just there's so much to like from Josh Allen, and I think that this whatever day it is, Sunday, Saturday, whatever day it is, the history between these teams are going to be an all-time like hate fest because these teams hate each other and they can't wait to watch it.
Speaking of, the bad calls that we saw over this past weekend, this just irks me, pisses me off when I see crap like this. Patrick Mahomes does not agree with the narrative that he and the Chiefs get extra calls from the refs. I don't feel that way. I just feel I just try to play football, and at the end of the day, the referees are doing their best to call the game as fair and as proper as they can. Go fuck yourself. I don't care, Larry. I'm sorry I swore, but no, dude. I mean, it was ridiculous. And then not only that, but the shove, not even the shove, the push out of bounds, and he was like, that he flopped. and I'm so glad they didn't call that. They were like, I can't do that one, dude. And then not only that, but that got blown up all over social media, all over ESPN. So, he's aware that everyone's looking at that like, oh, they all noticed that. I thought I was being slick about that. And not only that, but then, what is it? The head of officiating has to release a video to, describe why that one call was made. And I'm sorry, but like, if the head of officiating has to, make a video to talk about why the call was made, to me, that at least says that at the highest level in the NFL, they're aware that now it's...
Oh, they have to be.
I mean, before, I think they kind of played it off as if like, oh, that's just an urban legend, whatever. Fans are going to say all kinds of crazy stuff. But now I think that's kind of been put more into light. And so now they're probably like, okay, so everyone's kind of aware of this now. Like, the only time I've ever seen Patrick Mahomes not get the calls and the Chiefs not get the calls that they were supposed to be getting, that they're used to getting, was against the Buccaneers. Because I don't think, this sounds really bad, but I don't think the NFL was like, I mean, I should say this. I think the NFL had a stance of, hey, he cannot outdo Tom Brady. And because Tom Brady was on the other side, I mean, how many holding penalties they were calling holding on the Chiefs left and right, pass interference, everything that they normally don't call against the Chiefs, they did in that game because Tom Brady was on the other side. So I think they were like, well, if he wins, he gets to cement himself as the greatest of all time. And so there was a lot more riding on that. I mean, this is me purely speculating at that, but that's just kind of what I feel. But that really pisses me off that he would come out and say that. But I mean, I guess at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what is he supposed to say?
Well, it's funny too, because right, like, I do get favored. Like, okay, like we all know LeBron James gets calls that Joe Blow and the G League won't get. We all know MJ got calls, Curry, although doesn't get many calls. Like, your superstars get calls, right? And so it's not surprising. Like, and it's also not the first time there's been ticky-tack calls with like top NFL teams. Go back to the Rams and Saints game in the playoffs that eventually led to Sean Payton kind of pushing the NFL to leading to having defensive interferences challenged because the guy got rocked in the playoffs and they didn't call it.
That was the worst. And then the guy who hit him was like, yeah, he's like, I lit him up. It was either get the call or give up a touchdown.
Right. And look, the Saints had chances to win that game afterwards, but then you look at the Chiefs. We all know in San Francisco, Nick Bosa was held. It happens all the time. Even this past year against Kansas City, Shanahan's pointing out, look, I don't mind if you call that, but call it on both sides. And it doesn't happen. And not even taking the Niners perspective here, go back to that Chiefs game against Philadelphia. James Bradbury gets called for a holding penalty, which is like, okay, like maybe you call it, but like you're letting them play for 3.5 quarters, not the fourth quarter. Why? And so the NFL this year has been atrocious at penalties, refereeing. It's been really bad. And I think that on a big stage like that, where most of the NFL doesn't want Kansas City to win, sometimes there's, people over analyzing things, but I think on full display last weekend, it was clear as day that, you watched Jared Goff get destroyed by the Commanders' defense.
He got lit up.
If that was Mahomes, it would have been 15 yards, ejections, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, targeting, like what?
And to Mahomes' credit, he knows he can get away with things. And he knows how to skirt the rules.
If you look at right when he gets hit, where is it? Right there. He's looking at the ref. He's like, did you see that? Did you see that? He pushed me down. And he knows what he's doing.
Right. So it's hard to, would I blame him for knowing it? No. Like, if you know you have an advantage, use it. Same thing as the Dodgers. You want to defer money? It's not illegal. You can do it.
I don't want to talk about Dodgers. I don't. I really don't.
So did you see that Kirby Yates signing?
Did you see the that post of Robert Salah? It was like on the move, going to the Dodgers, and they're like, and people were like, they did it again. they signed Robert Salah. Like, fuck it, bring him in.
Honestly, man. Well, now there's reports the Dodgers are trying to trade players away from their 40-man roster because they can't house all these players they just signed. And it's
this ridiculous.
What the hell's going on? Like, okay, but back to football. Like, Mahomes knows he can skirt the rules. Mahomes knows he has the advantage, so he uses it. I don't blame him for that, but it's up to the NFL to go, okay, our fans see this. It's not just like, if it was just the fans, whatever, the fans bitch him all the time. But it's like, now the opposing teams, their quarterback, their coaches, their defensive players are talking about this aloud. Like, it's a known thing.
It's a known thing. It's so bad.
And so, like, now you have to course correct, and I wonder if they overcorrect this weekend against the Bills, and hopefully things go Buffalo's way, which I won't complain about.
No, absolutely not. As we wrap things up, we're talking with Sterling Bennett, host of 49ers Access, and covers the Niners for 95.7 The Game. A couple things. Commanders, Lions, I thought Jaden Daniels, man, that guy is phenomenal. He looked poised, not fazed by situation whatsoever. He's the reason why they won. I mean, how many times did he run? What's going on?
Oh, we have breaking news.
What is it?
Trent Baalke is no longer the Jaguars GM.
No, what? Hold on. Okay, hold on. This.
Oh my god.
Hold on. I gotta find this now. This is breaking news. I'm sure Larry's like, you're supposed to go to commercial. It's fine. Let me see. Where is it? There it is.
But what does this mean for Robert Salah now? Like, they botched a Liam Cohen thing. Does this mean like Salah is like, they're gonna get a new GM and Salah picks his guy? This is worse news to me.
Yeah, this may be because the other candidates were like, yeah, I don't like Trent Baalke. He's a phony. And so now he's been released courtesy of RSF Niners over on Twitter or on X, but he has been let go.
Like, But to me, it's like, is this them, okay, saying we messed up with Liam Cohen. We didn't get our guy the offensive coordinator we wanted. But now you're willing to give Saleh his GM pick? Like, now you kind of have to hand over the keys to the kingdom to whoever your head coach is.
But is that the guy you want to hand it over to? I don't think so. Let me play this one.
I don't know. Imagine Joe Douglas going back with Saleh in Jacksonville.
This is unbelievable. So all this time we've been playing it up like, Baalke's conspiring against the Niners, and then he gets fired.
Oh my goodness.
And Khan recently said that he did not feel that Trent Baalke influenced the decision making of coaches wanting to come here. Apparently, he thought wrong because now he's fired him.
But like, why would you wait this long? Like, was Cohen declining the job the final straw? Because
it must have been.
Like, you fired Doug Peterson, you let Baalke make that decision, which, okay, I agreed with, but it's like, you can argue the issue in Jacksonville isn't coaching. It's personnel. Like,
well, maybe what it is,
Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson, and Walker's fine, but it's like Aiden Hutchinson's right there.
Hutchinson's a monster. Maybe it was the fact that he listened to what you were saying and he reached out to Jim Tom Sula and said, "Hey, you want to come back?" That's it. I'm done. Get him out of here. And look, we've known this from the past from his social interactions is that Trent Baalke typically doesn't take responsibility for any of his failures. So more than likely he was blaming it on everybody else. And then maybe Khan just said, "You know what? I'm done. You're fired, dude. Get out of here." So this is great news for the world. Again, we're going to cheer for this. Trent Baalke has been fired. And I never cheer. I never applaud for anyone losing their job. But in this case, it's too easy.
Well, it's like Brian Schneider and Nick Sorensen and Trent Baalke. You're okay with it at that point. Chip Kelly, you're okay with it. Like, okay, yeah.
Potato Chip Kelly, man. But Trent Baalke is no longer making decisions in Jacksonville. How would that influence their next head coaching position? I don't know. And it could be that it was more than one candidate probably said, if he's there, I'm probably not going to take the job. And so Khan probably said, okay,
why would you
get this guy out of here? Does this mean that Saleh's going to take the job? Maybe, because now they got to find a new GM. But if you're Robert Salah, you're like, wait a minute. Okay, so now you want to find a new GM. You want to hire me, and we got to really figure this out with the draft not that far away. To me, you have to have a GM before you have a coach. But in this case, I think he's going to go the other way around.
Niners didn't. Niners didn't do that.
But who do they go to now? I mean, like, what coach is the kind of guy you bring in that can run essentially everything? I don't think it's Robert Salah. Who?
Mike McCarthy would make some sense.
Mike McCarthy.
But
he's like, I like the Cowboys.
But yikes. Like,
that's nuts, dude. That's
them firing Baalke a day before Saleh is supposed to fly out and 2 days before their interview. Either they're prepping for that, or they're just like, look, we're not getting anybody we want. We've had a couple guys turn down the job here. You didn't get Ben Johnson. You didn't get Cohen. We're losing on candidates. Like, we don't have many people left. The Jaguars are a mess.
Something just happened, dude. Like, something happened really bad that led to this on top of everything you just talked about. That's insane. And he can go join the couch with Mark Andrews, who dropped the ball to help tie the game. Goodness. They're both like, yeah, that's it. We fucked up.
Him and Devondre Campbell is out there dabbing it up, eating some popcorn, watching football like Dwight Goodman after dodgeball. Oh, it's gonna be great.
It is absolutely great. Sterling, thank you so much for coming on here and talking to me about NFL and Niners. Like always, dude, it's a pleasure to have you on. Where can everyone find you and all your content? And what do you got coming the rest of the week?
Yeah, so on YouTube, you can find me at 49ers Access. We cover everything regarding the team. On social media, on X and Twitter, it's 49ers_access. The Instagram is 49ers.access. Everywhere podcasts are available, you can find me again at 49ers Access. And we may just have to talk about this Baalke stuff later today, so we'll see what happens.
There we go.
I can't
believe this just happened. Oh, my God.
Perfect. Wow.
And all this time, I'm like, he's torturing us. I hate Baalke. Then he got fired.
Man,
it shows you that Khan is not as naive as maybe some of us may have thought. Unbelievable. I can't believe it happened right now, but I love it. Guys, you're listening to the NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.